3 days ago. 14th floor. Westbrook Group headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Hartford. A mahogany desk. 2 attorneys. 1 notary. The quiet hum of a building that believes in its own importance. Dorian Westbrook charcoal suit, silver cufflinks catching afternoon light, picks up a pen. His attorney slides the divorce papers across the desk. Dorian looks at them for exactly 2 seconds. Then he smiles. Not a small smile. The full, open, deeply satisfied smile of a man who has spent 8 months engineering a financial structure designed to leave his wife with almost nothing, who has watched his attorneys prepare exhibits that will make her look like a woman who contributed nothing to a marriage and now wants everything from it. He signed. 3 signatures, each one confident, each one unhurried, each one carrying the specific pleasure of a man who believes he has won something that matters. His attorney said, "We are in excellent position for Thursday's hearing, Dorian." Dorian capped his pen, looked out at the city he believed was his. She has no lawyer, no family showing up, no support. Thursday is a formality. He smiled again. He did not know, sitting in that 14th floor office with his city spread beneath him, that at that exact moment, in a building across town, a titanium briefcase was being loaded into a car by a man named Harrison Cole. A briefcase containing 14 exhibits, 3 months in preparation, containing the precise, documented, authenticated end of everything Dorian Westbrook had spent his life building. He signed those papers smiling. Thursday arrived. The Superior Courtroom of Hartford County is cold this morning. Cold in the way rooms built for judgment are always cold. Mahogany panels, fluorescent light. The American flag at attention beside the bench. The gallery filling with faces dressed in their best, not because they support anyone in this room, but because Hartford society treats divorce proceedings involving significant wealth the way they treat theater openings. They came to watch someone fall. Seraphina Elara Voss-Montclair walks to her table, alone, navy blue blazer buttoned to precision. Pearl white lapels catching the cold courtroom light. Leather portfolio under her arm, not a strand of dark hair displaced, not a tremor in her jaw. She sets her portfolio down, smooths her blazer once, sits. From across the room the swell of confident male laughter. Dorian enters like a man arriving at his own coronation. Victoria Chase Holloway half a step behind. A young associate carrying 3 leather-bound binders, organized, indexed, devastating. Dorian pauses at the courtroom door, looks across the room at Seraphina, at her empty table, at her solitary figure in navy blue. The same smile from 3 days ago returns to his face. He crosses the room, passes within 3 feet of her table, lowers his voice just enough for her to hear, "This won't take long." Seraphina does not look up. She opens her portfolio. And in the deep amber of her eyes, something moves. Quiet, patient, absolutely certain. The courtroom feels completely. On Dorian's side, 12 people. Carolyn Westbrook in dusty rose, wearing the satisfied expression of a woman who spent 7 years believing her son married beneath himself. Business partners Richard Hale and Conrad Marsh, present because the asset division today directly affects their joint ventures. 3 of Victoria's associates, laptops open, prepared for a proceeding they expect to finish before lunch. On Seraphina's side, empty. Every single seat. 12 empty seats arranged in a row like a public declaration of abandonment. The gallery absorbs this immediately. Eyes move from the empty seats to the woman sitting alone below. The math is done quickly and incorrectly by everyone who does it. Judge Marie-Claire Fontaine enters at 9 precisely. The room rises. Sits. She looks at Seraphina's table over her reading glasses. Ims, Voss-Montclair. You have elected to represent yourself in these proceedings? Yes, Your Honor. Clear. Even a bell struck once, perfectly pitched. You understand the complexity of the asset division before this court today? I understand everything before this court today, Your Honor. Thank you. A ripple moves through the gallery. Thomas Bright Dorian's college friend, third row, suppresses a laugh poorly enough that it becomes audible. Victoria does not bother hiding her smile. She arranges her binders with the comfortable efficiency of a woman arranging flowers at her own celebration. Dorian leans back, already gone, in his mind, to the dinner he booked for tonight. The private room at Maison Blanc, the good champagne, the specific pleasure of a completed demolition. Victoria rises, 12 minutes, surgical, precise, months of preparation behind every sentence. She describes the marriage with clinical efficiency. She describes Seraphina leaving the workforce. She constructs with devastating, deliberate language the portrait of a woman who contributed nothing and now wants everything. Ms. Voss-Montclair gave up her modest career in art curation to pursue what my client would generously characterize as personal endeavors. In 7 years of marriage, she generated no independent income, no business interest, and relied entirely upon the financial infrastructure my client built from nothing. She pauses, lets it sit. The scratch of pens on notepads, the shift of gallery bodies. Carolyn Westbrook's quiet, satisfied exhale, the exhale of a woman who has been waiting 7 years for exactly this moment. Dorian watches Seraphina's face, looking for the crack, the trembling lip, the reddening eyes. Seraphina writes something in her portfolio, looks up briefly, returns to writing. The detachment baffles him so completely that the muscle in his jaw tightens. Judge Fontaine turns. Ms. Voss-Montclair, is there anything you wish to establish before we proceed? Yes, Your Honor. Seraphina closes her portfolio calmly. I would like the court to note that we are expecting additional parties this morning. Victoria's pen stops. Additional parties? Judge Fontaine raises one eyebrow. From which organization? Seraphina looks at the courtroom doors. Then back at the judge. They will identify themselves, Your Honor. You want to know who I am. You look at this courtroom, and you see a woman in navy blue sitting alone at an empty table, and you believe you understand the story. You are wrong. I am the granddaughter of Eleanor Voss-Montclair, who at the age of 43 sat across from the board of the largest private shipping consortium in the northern Atlantic, and told them quietly she would be acquiring controlling interest by Tuesday, and then did exactly that. I am the daughter of Augustine Elias Voss-Montclair, who built the Voss-Montclair Group from a regional operation into a transnational enterprise spanning 14 countries. Forbes list. 11 consecutive years. A man whose signature on a document can move markets before the ink dries. I am Seraphina Elara Voss-Montclair, and I hid that name behind a modest apartment and an art curation salary for 8 years, not because I was ashamed of my bloodline, but because I needed to know who loved me. Not my family name, not the inheritance, not my grandmother's signature on doors that Dorian walked through without knowing who built them. I met Dorian at a gallery opening. I was 26. 2 years into living as simply Seraphina Elara, no surname, no family connections announced. A small apartment. A salary that paid for good coffee and nothing else. He was charming. God, he was charming. He told me he loved my mind first. Then my laugh. Then the way I stood in front of paintings as if they were speaking directly to me. He never asked about my family in a way that suggested strategy. I mistook that incuriosity for respect. I was wrong. My grandmother called 2 weeks before my wedding. She said, "My darling, I have had this man investigated." I said, "Grandmother, please," she said, "he has 3 business partners who will tell you he is extraordinary. He has 2 former employees who will tell you something entirely different." I would like you to speak to the employees." I didn't. I was 26 and in love and absolutely certain that love at its most sincere was proof against everything. I married him. For 3 years the marriage was functional. I was the perfect wife at every investor dinner, every conference, every occasion where his ambition needed an elegant woman beside it to feel legitimate. I brought him into rooms my family name could open, rooms whose doors swung wide in ways he noticed but never fully questioned. By year 4, I had become furniture, expensive, tasteful, invisible. By year 6, I discovered what he had been doing with our money. The accounts moved. The partnerships restructured. The deliberate dismantling of what should have been our shared financial future transferred piece by piece into shell structures designed to leave me with almost nothing. He had been planning the divorce longer than I had known it was coming. When I finally called my father the first time in 8 years I had reached for that lifeline, Augustine Voss-Montclair was silent for 11 seconds. I counted every one. Then he said very quietly, "Tell me when you are ready." "We will be there." I said, "Not yet. Papa, I need to stand alone first. I need them to see me stand alone before they see me stand with you. I need the world to understand I am not rescued. I am not helpless. I am choosing the moment." He understood, because he raised me exactly this way. My grandmother said your grandfather would have said the same thing. "Tell me when, my love. We will move heaven itself." I spent 3 months building my case alongside Harrison Cole's team, in complete secrecy, after midnight. In offices across the city when no one was watching, I documented every transfer, every shell company, every hidden account, every fraudulent restructuring Dorian believed was invisible. I documented the 2 flagship properties in his empire, initially capitalized using investment funds from accounts I held before the marriage moved, through 3 deliberate layers of corporate restructuring designed to obscure the trail. He built the foundation of his empire with my money. And then he signed papers to leave me with nothing. Smiling, this morning I walked into this courtroom alone, in navy blue. And I sat down at an empty table. And I waited for the moment I had spent 3 months preparing. Mid-morning. The light through the courtroom's high windows has shifted, casting long shadows across the gallery. The room has settled into the comfortable certainty of a proceeding going in one direction. Victoria presents Exhibit A through Exhibit F business valuations. Asset inventories. The argument that Dorian's real estate empire, 12 commercial properties, 2 active development projects, and investment portfolio assembled over 7 years is entirely, exclusively his creation. Seraphina's entitlement is the modest settlement figure Victoria's team prepared. Generous sounding on the surface, designed like dismissal underneath. Dorian passes Victoria a note. Is she going to present anything? Victoria writes back nothing significant. Proceed, he leans back, adjusts his cufflinks. The unhurried movements of a man who has already collected his winnings and is simply waiting for the paperwork. His business partner Richard Hale catches Dorian's eye from the gallery. Small nod. Everything is fine. Judge Fontaine calls a brief recess. The gallery exhales. People stretch. Check phones, the comfortable commentary of spectators who believe they already know the ending. Dorian rises, gives his mother the small private nod, "We are fine." Carolyn presses her hand to her pearls in relief. He moves toward the water service, passes within 5 feet of Seraphina. He stops. He cannot help himself. He never could. Seraphina, low, almost kind. The cruelest register he possesses. You should have brought a lawyer, even a mediocre one. This is not going to serve you. She does not look up. Dorian, go drink your water. The specific irritation of a man whose condescension has been returned unopened flickers in his gray eyes. He masters it, smiles, walks away. And then beneath the gallery noise the deep resonant sound of multiple vehicle engines outside the courthouse. Not rushing, not urgent. The unhurried, deliberate approach of vehicles that know exactly where they are going. A bailiff near the side window glances out. His posture changes, the involuntary straightening of a man who has just registered something that recalibrates his understanding of this morning. One of Victoria's junior associates receives a text, reads it again, sets his phone face down with the carefulness of someone who does not want to be seen reacting. He leans toward Victoria, speaks quietly into her ear. Victoria's hand mid-reach toward her coffee cup stops in the air. Seraphina feels every molecule of shifting air in the room. She closes her portfolio, clasps her hands on the table, and waits. Court reconvenes. The afternoon light is colder, longer shadows. The specific airlessness of a room about to change permanently. Judge Fontaine returns to the bench, opens the file. Before we continue, I must note for the record that you mentioned expecting additional parties this morning, Ms. Voss-Montclair. It is now past 11. No additional parties have appeared. No appearance notices have been filed. Is there anything you wish to update for the record? Every eye in the courtroom swings to Seraphina. Her face, amber eyes, composed mouth, the very slight tightening at her jaw. From the outside, it looks exactly like what Dorian needs it to look like. A woman swallowing her final humiliation. Thomas Bright exhales an audible breath of amusement. Victoria uncaps her pen with a small, decisive click punctuation on what she believes is Seraphina's complete failure. Dorian turns fully in his chair to face her. This is the moment he came for. Not the settlement figure. This exact moment. The complete, visible public confirmation that without him she disappears. He allows himself the full smile, does not hide it. Richard Hale mirrors it from the gallery. Conrad Marsh leans back with satisfied comfort. Carolyn Westbrook tilts her chin, 7 years of anticipated vindication arriving exactly on schedule. Ms. Voss-Montclair. Judge Fontaine's voice carries the gentle institutional pity of authority, confronting hopeless unpreparedness. If you have no further representation to introduce, we will need to proceed to your honor. Seraphina's voice does not shake, does not waver, comes out clear and clean and utterly without desperation, but beneath it a current that carries to every corner of this room. A current that says I am alone in this room, and I have always known I might appear to be. And I came anyway, and I am not afraid. I would ask the court for one brief additional moment. Judge Fontaine studies her. Victoria shakes her head almost imperceptibly toward the judge. Let us move forward. She has nothing. Judge Fontaine draws breath to respond, and the main courtroom doors open. Not tentatively, not with the half-push of someone uncertain of their welcome. They open with the specific, unhurried, absolute authority of people who have never once in their lives needed permission to enter any room. Light floods in from the corridor. Seraphina does not turn around. She already knows. She closes her eyes for exactly 1 second. And something in her face for the first time all morning, perhaps for the first time in 3 years, releases. The doors stay open. Footsteps, not hurried, not aggressive. The measured, deliberate cadence of people who have never needed to rush toward anything because the world has always arranged itself to receive them. 5 full seconds of complete silence in the courtroom has every person in the gallery registers, one by one, what is entering this room and what it means. She enters first. Eleanor Voss-Montclair, 79 years old, 5 feet 6 inches of silver white hair, deep burgundy Valentino wool, and 7 decades of accumulated power that precedes her body into the room by approximately 3 seconds, the way a great storm announces itself before it arrives. She moves the way tidal forces move, with complete, unhurried, geological inevitability. Her white-gloved right hand rests on the polished ebony cane, and every step on the marble floor sounds like a deliberate, irreversible statement. She pauses in the doorway, surveys the courtroom the way a general surveys a field before deciding it presents no particular strategic difficulty. Her amber eyes, Seraphina's eyes. The original source cross the room and find her granddaughter at the table below, and in those 3 seconds of silence, without a single word spoken, Elara Voss-Montclair communicates everything that matters. I am here. I have always been here. You were never not for 1 single second alone. Behind her, Augustine Elias Voss-Montclair steps through the doorway, 6 feet 2 inches. Midnight black, double-breasted suit, silver temples. And the room reacts to him physically, a collective involuntary adjustment of posture, the instinctive response of people in the presence of someone whose authority operates on a frequency below conscious thought. He does not look at Dorian. Not yet. He looks only at his daughter. And the look on his face, this man who has built transnational empires, who has sat in rooms that shaped industries, is simply a father who has walked into a courtroom where his child has been sitting alone in navy blue, bearing public humiliation with perfect composure for 3 hours. The tenderness and the fury in his expression are so completely intertwined, they become something that transcends both. Behind Augustine, filing through the doors with systematic precision, 4 attorneys, led by Harrison Cole himself, senior partner. Cole, Armand, and Whitfield, the firm name that makes other attorneys straighten involuntarily, each carrying titanium reinforced briefcases, the specific cases used when documentation is irreplaceable. Behind the attorneys, 2 forensic financial consultants from the Voss-Montclair Group's internal legal division. The quiet, absolute confidence of people who manage assets at a scale that makes Dorian's empire look like a preliminary sketch. And finally, 2 men in dark suits who take positions near the gallery doors with the trained stillness of people whose function is environmental management. Not aggressive, not theatrical. Simply present the way mountains are present. A court officer moves a second table into position alongside Seraphina's, prepared in advance, held in a side room all morning, waiting for exactly this moment. The gallery has stopped breathing, every back straight, every conversation stopped mid-syllable. Carolyn Westbrook's hand frozen mid-reach toward her purse, suspended in the air. Forgotten, the satisfied expression worn since she entered this building this morning gone. In its place, the first unwilling wave of a comprehension she is not ready to receive. Thomas' bright mouth open. The expression of a man who arrived at what he believed was a minor social event and has found himself inside something he cannot process. Richard Hale and Conrad Marsh exchange a look. Not the comfortable nod from 30 minutes ago. This look contains an entire recalculation of the last 8 months, of every decision made alongside Dorian, of their own legal exposure. Richard Hale reaches slowly into his jacket and removes his phone. His thumb moves before he has fully decided what he is doing. He is calling his own attorney. Before this proceeding concludes, even the court stenographer has paused fingers suspended above keys, professional composure momentarily dissolved. Elara Voss-Montclair moves down the central aisle without asking permission, takes the gallery seat directly behind Seraphina, settles with absolute composure, removes her gloves 1 finger at a time, deliberately unhurried, and places them in her lap. Then she leans forward very slightly and places 1 ungloved hand on Seraphina's shoulder. The courtroom hears nothing, but Seraphina feels it. And for the first time in 3 years her eyes fill. Not weakness. The specific private emotion of a person who has carried something enormous entirely alone and has just finally been given permission to set it down. She does not cry. She regulates it in one controlled breath. But the feeling is visible for that one moment, amber eyes bright, jaw set with the determination of a woman who will finish what she started before she allows herself to feel what it cost. Augustine settles beside his mother, and now, only now, he turns and looks at Dorian Westbrook. No performed menace, no theatrical fury. Simply the complete focused total attention of a man whose patience has served its purpose and who has turned everything he is toward a problem he intends to resolve. Dorian looks back at him, and something biological and honest below every layer of cultivated charm tells Dorian Westbrook with absolute clarity, this is not a man you can manage. Victoria Chase Holloway has gone the precise color of her cream blazer. She looks at Elara Voss-Montclair, looks at the name embossed on Harrison Cole's portfolio, looks at the second table now positioned beside Seraphina's, and she understands completely, finally, that the case she walked into this building with this morning no longer exists in any form she recognizes. Now Dorian Westbrook. His face. He turned when the doors opened, the casual reflex of a man expecting nothing of consequence, still wearing the smile from moments ago. The smile stops, not gradually, like a power cut. One moment present, the next moment completely gone, leaving his face without instruction, without performance, without the mask he has maintained in every room for 20 years. He watches Elara Voss-Montclair walk down the aisle of this courtroom, and he is recalculating 7 years at speed. Every investor dinner, where important men looked at Seraphina with something that was not the polite interest reserved for a guest's wife, but something that recognized her before he did. Every door that opened a fraction too easily when she was on his arm. Every time she mentioned her family with a brevity he interpreted as estrangement. That brevity was not estrangement. It was patience. It was the deliberate restraint of a woman who needed him to be completely, fatally certain she had no one, so that when the doors opened, the distance between his certainty and the truth would be the exact measure of his destruction. He thinks about signing those papers 3 days ago. Smiling, Elara Voss-Montclair passes his table. She does not look at him. She is the most powerful person in this room, and she does not grant him the dignity of her gaze. He does not exist in her field of attention. He is a problem her granddaughter already solved. Harrison Cole rises from the table beside Seraphina, buttons his jacket. Your Honor. His voice fills the courtroom with the ease of someone who has spoken in rooms far larger than this one. Harrison Cole, of Cole, Armand and Whitfield, appearing on behalf of Seraphina Elara Voss-Montclair. He pauses, allows the firm name to settle into every corner of the room. We apologize for the delay in our appearance. We have documentation we would like to introduce for the court's consideration. He opens the titanium briefcase. Extensive documentation. Judge Fontaine looks at the briefcase, looks at the 4 attorneys, looks at Elara Voss-Montclair and recognizes her, because Judge Fontaine has lived in Hartford for 40 years and knows precisely whose grandmother is sitting 20 feet from her bench. She straightens, removes her reading glasses. Mr. Cole, we will hear your submissions. Seraphina Elara Voss-Montclair opens her portfolio, her grandmother's hand on her shoulder, her father in the gallery, 4 of the most formidable legal minds in the region arranged around her, no longer alone. She was never alone. And she begins. Harrison Cole presents Exhibit 1, a 37-page document establishing Seraphina Elara Voss-Montclair as the sole named beneficial interest holder of a family trust structure, predating the marriage by 14 years, containing a specific, irrevocable clause Seraphina personally added on her 25th birthday, protecting every asset from any future marital claim. Victoria's pen is down. Harrison presents Exhibit 2, A forensic financial analysis detailing the precise time-stamped movement of funds from joint marital accounts into the shell structures Dorian's team spent 8 months constructing. Every transfer, every date, every intermediary account, every falsified document, all cross-referenced against Dorian's own authenticated signatures. He presents Exhibit 3. A property title analysis demonstrating that 2 of Dorian's 12 commercial properties, including his flagship development, the cornerstone of his empire, were initially capitalized using investment funds from accounts Seraphina held before the marriage, moved through 3 deliberate layers of corporate restructuring designed to obscure the trail. He built the foundation of his empire with her money, then engineered a divorce to leave her with nothing. He presents Exhibit 4. Communications between Dorian and his financial advisor spanning 14 months, discussing the concealment strategy. In language leaving nothing ambiguous about intent, about premeditation, about the deliberate targeting of a woman he believed had no resources to fight back. Judge Fontaine sets her reading glasses down. She looks at the documents before her with the expression of a woman who has presided over this courtroom for 30 years and is currently revising her understanding of this entire morning from its foundation. She looks at Dorian, the procedural neutrality in her voice gone. Mr. Westbrook, precise, cold. The specific cold of institutional authority that has been misled and is not inclined toward generosity. These documents demonstrate a pattern of deliberate premeditated financial fraud executed across the duration of your marriage and accelerated in the 8 months preceding this filing. Do you wish to respond? Every person in the courtroom turns to Dorian. He looks at Victoria. Victoria leans close and speaks rapidly into his ear. Dorian straightens in his chair, buttons his jacket, once the automatic reflexive gesture of a man reaching for composure, the way a drowning person reaches for anything solid. He looks at Judge Fontaine, and he speaks. Your Honor, these documents have been there are context issues with these transfers that my team can fully explain. The capitalization records Miss Voss-Montclair is referencing were part of an informal arrangement between us, a personal matter between a husband and wife that was never intended to constitute a formal loan and was never documented as such because at the time we were married. These were household decisions, joint decisions, and to characterize them now as fraud he stops because Judge Fontaine is looking at him. Not with anger, not with theatrical condemnation, with something considerably more devastating, the flat, composed, completely unimpressed attention of a woman who has sat on this bench for 30 years and knows exactly what she is looking at. A man who just made it worse, Mr. Westbrook. Her voice is quiet, precise, the specific quiet of someone who does not need volume to carry weight. Exhibit 15 contains the original signed transfer document bearing your signature as witness acknowledging the funds as a personal loan from Miss Voss-Montclair's private account. The word loan appears 4 times in that document. In your handwriting, a beat of absolute silence. I would strongly suggest, Judge Fontaine continues, removing her reading glasses and setting them deliberately on the bench, that you stop speaking and start listening to your attorney. Dorian's mouth closes. The muscle in his jaw pulses once, twice, and then the thing no room has ever seen from Dorian Westbrook, the complete total public collapse of the performance. Not dramatic, not loud. Simply the quiet witnessed irreversible moment when a man who has spent 20 years being the most confident person in every room he entered runs out of room. He sits back, looks at his hands on the table, and says nothing else. Victoria straightens. In a voice that has lost every trace of morning confidence, Your Honor. I would request a brief recess to confer with my client. Judge Fontaine looks at her for a long moment. You will have 15 minutes, Miss Chase Holloway. I would use them carefully. Then she turns to the full courtroom. Given the nature of these exhibits, I am issuing an immediate order freezing all asset transfers connected to the Westbrook estate pending full forensic review. This proceeding is being formally escalated to include civil fraud investigation. Mr. Westbrook, I would strongly advise you to retain additional counsel before we reconvene. The words land like stones dropped into still water. Richard Hale stands quietly and walks toward the exit without making eye contact with anyone, already speaking into his phone before the door closes behind him. Conrad Marsh 2 steps behind him. Carolyn Westbrook sits in Dusty Rose receiving against her will, without preparation the full weight of understanding who the woman she spent 7 years dismissing at holiday dinners actually is. Eleanor Voss-Montclair's granddaughter. Every condescending word across 7 years of holiday dinners. Every small dismissal. Every moment of manufactured superiority delivered to a woman who received it with quiet composure and said nothing because she was choosing her moment. Carolyn Westbrook understands this now. In this courtroom. In Dusty Rose. In front of everyone. Seraphina rises. In a voice perfectly level, perfectly clear, carrying to every corner, without effort, your honor. Before the recess, I would like to submit Exhibit 15. She places a single document on Harrison Cole's table. This is the original capitalization record for the Westbrook Group's flagship property. The one Dorian described in these proceedings as the foundation of everything he built from nothing. One beat. Deliberate. It shows the initial investment came from a private account registered in my name 18 months before our wedding, transferred under a personal loan agreement that was never repaid and never disclosed in any financial filing Dorian has submitted to this court. She looks at Judge Fontaine directly. He did not build his empire from nothing, Your Honor. Then she looks at Dorian. Not angry. Not triumphant. Not cruel. Something far more devastating than any of those. The clear, composed, unshakable gaze of a woman who knew from the moment she sat down at that empty table this morning exactly how this day would end. He built it from me. And then he signed papers to leave me with nothing. She pauses, smiling. The courtroom is completely silent. Thomas Bright is gone. Richard Hale is gone. Conrad Marsh is gone. Carolyn Westbrook sits very still with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes on a point on the floor that contains nothing, because there is nothing left to look at with satisfaction in this room. Victoria Chase Holloway closes her binder. Not a strategic regrouping, a closing. The final closing of a case that no longer exists. And Dorian Westbrook, who 3 days ago sat in his 14th floor office and signed divorce papers smiling, certain the woman across from him had nothing, knew nothing, and could prove nothing, sits alone at his table, staring at the empty space in front of him, with everything he believed was his beginning to dismantle around him in a room full of witnesses who came expecting to watch someone fall. They watched the right person. They were simply wrong about which one. The hearing lasted 4 days. On day 1, Judge Fontaine's asset freeze went into immediate effect. Every transfer Dorian executed in the previous 8 months locked pending forensic review. The Westbrook Group's operating accounts placed under court supervision before the afternoon session concluded. On day 2, Richard Hale filed a separate legal action against Dorian for financial misrepresentation in their joint venture agreements. Conrad Marsh filed an identical action the same afternoon. 2 men who arrived Thursday morning as supporters left as plaintiffs. On day 3, the independent forensic review confirmed every finding in Harrison Cole's Exhibit 2. The transfers were deliberate, the shell structures intentional, the intent to defraud documented, authenticated, and unambiguous. On day 4, the settlement was reached, not the settlement Dorian engineered, not the dismissal number Victoria prepared. The judgment Harrison Cole negotiated restored to Seraphina Elara Voss-Montclair everything strategically removed with interest and initiated civil fraud proceedings that would follow Dorian Westbrook's professional reputation through every room he would attempt to enter for years to come. The flagship property built with Seraphina's money, the cornerstone he called the foundation of everything he built from nothing ordered into receivership within 30 days. By the end of the 2nd month, the development projects were frozen. By the end of the 3rd month, 2 more properties followed. His business partner's legal actions moved through the courts with the efficient speed of people wanting no further association with the name Westbrook on any document bearing their own signatures. By the end of the year, what had been the Westbrook real estate empire, 12 properties, 2 development projects, an investment portfolio assembled across 7 years, was a legal proceeding. A cautionary article in 3 business publications, and a lesson written in the permanent public record of a Hartford courtroom about the catastrophic cost of looking at the person across from you and deciding without evidence, without investigation, without anything but arrogance, that they have nothing, know nothing, and can prove nothing. Dorian did not attend the final judgment hearing. His attorney appeared in his place. Seraphina attended in person. She wore deep midnight blue, the color of depth, of certainty, of a woman who did not come to this city to beg or perform or be rescued. She came to collect what was always hers. 3 weeks after the final judgment, the library of the Voss-Montclair family estate. Walls of books to the ceiling. A fireplace burning amber and gold. Late afternoon light moving through tall windows that have looked out over these grounds for 3 generations. Seraphina sits across from her grandmother. Eleanor Voss-Montclair pours tea with the same unhurried precision she brings to every act. The grace of a woman who has never once done anything carelessly. She does not speak immediately. She allows the silence the full dignity it deserves. Then she says, "You chose the moment beautifully, my darling." And Seraphina laughs, a real laugh. Unguarded and warm and completely full, the laugh of a woman who walked through fire and came out the other side holding everything that matters and nothing that doesn't. Augustine appears in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled, coffee in his large hands. He watches his daughter laugh. The look on his face is not triumph, it is gratitude. Pure and uncomplicated. The gratitude of a father who raised a daughter strong enough to choose her own moment and wise enough to know when to open the door. This is what Dorian Westbrook never understood. He looked at a woman in navy blue sitting alone at an empty table, and he saw weakness. He did not see strategy. He did not see 3 months of preparation. He did not see the grandmother who built an empire before he was born, the father whose name moves markets, the attorneys in titanium briefcases waiting in a side room for a signal already given. He did not see that those empty seats beside her were not evidence of abandonment. They were deliberate. She left them empty because she needed him to be completely, arrogantly, fatally certain she had no one, so that when the doors opened, the distance between his certainty and the truth would be the exact measure of his undoing. Never mistake someone's grace for absence. Never mistake someone's patience for powerlessness. And never look at the person sitting alone across from you and assume that alone means unprotected, unprepared, or without a plan 3 months in the making. The most powerful people in any room are sometimes the ones who chose to walk in alone because they needed you to believe, right up until the moment they decided otherwise, that no one was coming. Someone was always coming. Dorian Westbrook signed those divorce papers smiling. He did not know he was signing the end of his own empire. He did not know that the woman in navy blue at the empty table had spent 3 months documenting every lie, every fraudulent transfer, every decision made in rooms he believed were private. He did not know that patience in the right hands, with the right preparation, and the right moment chosen with absolute precision is the most powerful force in any courtroom, in any room, in any world. He knows now. Before you go, 3 questions. I want your honest answers in the comments below. First, at what exact moment did you realize Seraphina was never truly alone? Was it the way she looked at those doors? The way she told the judge they will identify themselves? Or something even earlier? Second, when Dorian sat alone at that table, watching everything he built begin to dismantle around him in a room full of witnesses he invited, did you feel satisfied? Or something more complicated than satisfaction? Third, Seraphina chose to stand alone first, before calling her family, before revealing who she was. She chose the empty table, the empty seats, the apparent isolation deliberately. Do you believe that was the greatest act of strength in this entire story, or the most precise strategy you have ever seen executed? Leave your answers below. Every single one. And if this story moved you, if you have ever stood in a room where everyone assumed you had nothing, no one and no plan, share this today with someone who needs to be reminded that patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender, and the most extraordinary support in your life sometimes waits quietly in the wings until you are ready finally, completely, on your own terms to call it forward. Subscribe to Karma's Heiress, because the greatest revenge is not anger. It is preparation. It is patience. It is the moment you open those doors and let them see, finally, completely, irrevocably, that you were never alone. Not for 1 single second.